welcome to Alpha Talk. I am Forrest Jackson, the Vice President of Alpha Sigma Lambda Chapter of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. To my right is
J. Swallow Boy Nabikari Jr. I'm the Volus People's Hopeless People Chair, as well as the Iota Kappa Chapter Advisor. I'm a member of the Alpha Sigma Lambda Chapter as well.
And to my left today, we are joined by Councilman Casey Thomas.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate you taking the time to meet with us this evening after your busy day. We know you're putting in good work in the community, so we appreciate that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. The purpose today is for us to talk about the upcoming census. And we're going to start out with giving you a little overview of what we do as a chapter. Our platform is called A Voteless People is a Hopeless People. It's one of our national programs. And within that, we are working the census. And so, Brother Nabakari, can you give a little overview of the Voteless People is a Hopeless People program? What is it, how it got started, and what the purpose is?
Okay. So the Voteless People is a Hopeless People national program started back in the 30s. And back in the 30s, as you know, African Americans were fighting for the right to vote. We did not have it consistently across the country. And so this was a program designed to teach African Americans about their rights, as well as strategies to fight to get that right to vote. And it kind of transformed to more voter registration, voter education, and over time, this program has morphed and evolved. In the current landscape, it's more towards education, candidate forums, things of that nature. And right now, a major push is for the U.S. Census. And so that's the reason why we're here, so that we can educate on the census. And we thank Councilman Thomas for giving us time to talk about it today. And I think we can just go ahead and jump right in.
I think so, too. So, Councilman Thomas, this 2020 census is coming up. So talk a little bit about what the census is, how it works, what does it mean to us, African Americans in this community? How does it impact us?
Well, first I want to say thank you for taking the time to have this podcast so we can educate people who otherwise won't understand or get access to this type of information. Yesterday I made remarks at a census workshop that was hosted for neighborhood associations, faith-based communities, pastors, and in the South Dallas community about the census. And the thing that I said on yesterday was, this is the most important thing going on in 2020. And people say, well, don't we have a presidential election? Yes, we do. Don't we have a primary election? Yes, we do. But if we don't get this right, it doesn't matter who's the president, because the resources that we get from the federal government are determined by the U.S. Census. In 2010, we had an undercount in Dallas of 5,000 by babies alone. People didn't think about the fact that on April 1st, if a child is born April 1st, and that is Census Day, April 1st, if a child is born that day, that child counts on the census. And so when you miss, that is $1,000 per year for 10 years for every person that's undercounted. This example I gave yesterday. Let's say you have a community. In this community, you have thousands of people, right? But in that particular community, or let's say a census tract, 100 people don't get counted. Well, the way they allocate resources for communities is based on the census count. That means that community is going to have resources 100 people less than the number of people that should be provided. And so when you think about that, and if we duplicate that in several different communities, then you've got a situation where you have people who won't have the resources they need in order to make sure their families have the things in order for them to be successful. And that's why this is critically important.
So those children that are born on April 1st and are not counted, they're behind the gun at least for the next decade.
Absolutely.
From the jump.
I tell people on April 1st, if you are breathing, I don't care if you're newborn or you're a senior on life support, as long as you are breathing on April 1st, you count. And I know it's a shock value. Sometimes you have to throw out shock value to people to get people's attention. But it's that serious. We have to have a sense of urgency. We don't have a lot of time. Back in 2018, our former mayor, Mike Rollins, appointed me chair of the City of Dallas Complete Count Committee. Mayor Johnson kept me in this position. And so since 2018, my life has been the U.S. Census. And now it's right here. One thing that's unique is this is the first time ever the U.S. Census is going to be online. And so we have a lot of people, everybody's got this. Everybody's got this.
Right.
You can literally go on here in no more than 10 minutes and you can complete the census. We're encouraging pastors. We're going to have Super Census Sunday, which is the Sunday before April the 1st. We're going to say, pastor or minister or faith leader, have you ask your members to take out their phones, take 10 minutes, go to this particular website, go through, complete the census. When you complete it, it's a screen that says congratulations. That's the key. Once you have that, maybe we have chicken dinner or something for everybody who complete the census. We've got to be innovative. We've got to get out of the box and how we go about doing this time, because there's more at stake. Do you know in the United States there was less money allocated from the federal government this year than 10 years ago? Now we know who the president was 10 years ago.
Right.
That's all the difference in the world. The state of Texas, one of the states that's expected to get as many as 3 congressional seats. The state of Texas didn't put one dime into funding to make sure people know about the census.
Not surprising. Before we move on, let me back up a little bit. When you talked about being counted on April 1st, now that includes children that are in the children and parents that are in the hospital.
Absolutely.
How do they, besides electronically, I guess that may be the answer, but how would, if that option wasn't, for instance, last time when that happened, those 5,000 that weren't counted, how did they get missed in the hospital? How do we keep that from happening again?
Well, one, people just didn't think about the fact that babies born on that day can be counted. So when the parents completed or the head of the household, because that's who it is, the head of household complete that census, they didn't think about the fact that, you know what, I need to include this baby. Because this baby, 10 years from now, is not going to be a baby. It's going to be a 10-year-old child that's going to have a lot of wants and needs. And I know because I got one. 10-year-old son at home and a 12-year-old. And because of the importance of making sure that we have the resources that we need, federal dollars that we need, we cannot afford not to make sure everybody gets counted.
So let me ask you a question. Say I'm a college student and my hometown is out of the city or state. How can I participate?
I'm glad you asked that question. This came up just the other day at a census event I was at. Wherever you are on that day, college student, you complete the census wherever you are on that day. And we need to make sure that our college students, especially those who are in fraternities and sororities, but college students in general, but if you're in a fraternity or sorority, as you know, I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity, and you are looked at as a leader. So we need to have our undergraduate chapters knowledgeable about the census so they can make sure, first of all, that all of their chapter members complete the census, but then they, as leaders on their campus, make sure every student on their campus completes the census.
Now, do they complete it with the address where they're currently living on campus or the home address?
Yes, you complete it where you are.
Where you
Absolutely.
are. Okay.
Absolutely.
No, I mean the address that they
No.
put in there. It's,
Right.
it's wherever they're living. Okay. Okay, so hypothetically, a senior would complete that census, but his or her dollars would be allocated because he's probably about to leave and go back home or somewhere else.
Right.
But I guess it all balances out
Of
because
course.
when he moves somewhere, somebody else moves. to that
Absolutely.
place, right? Okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
Yeah.
So what about those who don't trust the government with their information, who feel they're off the grid?
Glad you asked that question. See, I just got back from Houston this past weekend with all the black council members all over the state of Texas, and we had a workshop and training on the census. And so I'm glad you asked that question because the key, trusted voices. You may not trust the government, but who do you trust? Do you trust Big Mama?
Yeah.
You know, something that's really interesting. The NALEO, National Association of Latino Elected Officials, did a survey, and they asked, who are the trusted voices in your community? You will never guess who the most trusted voice in the Latino community is.
Who was that?
The cafeteria worker.
Is that right?
Cafeteria worker is the most trusted voice in the Latino community. That's who feed their kids.
Right.
You see? And so we've got to begin thinking outside of the box. Identify trusted voices. Big Mama. Lady run the candy house on the corner. You see, we want to get these people, we got to do one-on-ones with them. Let's do a one-on-one quick overview of why the census is important. If we can get them to show up, let's do a quick training with a group of trusted voices about why the census is important. Because we know they've earned that trust. Everybody they come in contact with, when they say, boy, you better make sure your mama fill out that census, it's going to make a difference. And so we have to identify all the trusted voices in the community. Barbershops, beauty shops. I've been working on putting together a group called Black Men Count. Black men who are willing to go into barbershops and have a conversation about, hey man, you know, it's important you fill out the thing. You know why? Man, you know, we got to make sure that the things that we need for our community, we have. And the only way we can make sure we have those things is if we count. It's the other thing, another piece of shock value. If you don't count, you don't matter. If you tell somebody, you know what? If you don't count, you don't matter. Everybody want to matter.
Right.
Let me ask you this, because you know we're a skeptical people by nature, right?
Right.
So we're bound to be asked, where is this information going? Who's collecting this information? Once the count is over, where's this information stored?
This information is stored for 75 years with the federal government. If anyone reveals any of this information, they will be prosecuted and will have to pay a fine and go to prison. It's not worth it. It's not worth going out and saying, do you know such and such live here, or such and such not legal, or such and such? Because we know when you tell, somebody listening, and somebody gonna tell on you, and it's not worth it. And that's why it's critically important to make sure we identify trusted voices, those people in the community who we trust and who people respect, and arm them with the information about the census and let them do what they do on a daily basis.
So I have another question. What if I have a felony? If I have a felony, will I be able to be counted?
Don't matter. Are you breathing? If you're breathing, I don't care what your condition is. Another area group that was undercounted, people in jail. In jail. That's a temporary condition. We need to make sure that individuals in jail are counted, because those resources, funding that goes for jails, funding that goes for neighborhood programs, all these dollars come from the federal government based upon census count. Do you know who's playing a bigger role, a critical role in making sure that people complete the census? The business community. Because what do? they look at data based on different census tracts, hospitals, key roles, schools. In Houston, and I told them this when I was down there. There was a couple of council members from Houston that was at the meeting. I said, you know what? I'm born and raised from Dallas, love Dallas. I told them it's very little things about Houston I'm envious about, but I'm envious of how quick and how well y'all got organized about the census. What they've been able to do is they've got information. They've got coloring books on the census. Because what that's going to do, that's going to attract the kid. The kid can, if you're in school, you fill out this page, say yes to the census. Kid have to color it, take it home, and show mama how proud they are. What do we do in our community when we in our homes when we proud of something? Where do we put it? On the refrigerator.
Right. On a magnet. Get that magnet.
There you go.
Put it on the refrigerator.
Put it on the refrigerator, and that way, mama know. Oh, when she walk by the refrigerator. It say on it April 1st. I'm proud of baby work, but April 1st is on here, you see. And so that's what I mean when I say we got to get outside of the box. We got to think about what works in our community, what works in the hood. Ray, why do Ray need to make sure that the census is filled out? Well, Ray want to get access to some of these services in the community. And so we got to make sure that everybody understand in their own way. Talking points. We got to develop talking points for the hood. What's going to cause a person to want to take a minute? I'm telling you, everybody don't have access to Wi-Fi, but they have access to this phone. If I can motivate you, you'll take your own phone out and you'll fill it out.
Right.
So we're talking about the hood, right? So I'm gonna come at you like the hood, because I know I've had these talks. So nah, man, that they want this information for something else. It ain't just, they ain't trying to come give the hood a bunch of money. I ain't buying that. They want this information for something else. Why do they really want this information? What they gonna do with this stuff?
I tell you like this, and as you were talking, the answer came to me. What if you right and I'm wrong? What have you lost? You haven't lost nothing. But what if I'm right and you wrong? You've lost a lot. And so is it worth it to take this risk that this neighborhood that you grew up in, love, want to see prosper, miss out because you say, you know what, man, I don't know what they're going to do with that information. Hey, I got a background. None of the questions relate to that. They just want to know that you live here. That's it. That's all they want to do. They want to know that you live here, how many of y'all live here. That way we can make sure in this neighborhood we have everything that's coming to us.
So one last question, and then we'll give you the opportunity to give some closing remarks.
Okay.
We've talked about being not counted and $1,000 per person, but let's talk in concrete terms. What is lost? What is the risk? What are we losing if we don't get counted?
Bottom line, we lose dollars for our communities, dollars for our community centers, dollars for our rec centers, dollars for places that we call home. We lose dollars. We don't want to look across town and see them have that brand new pretty community center, and then our community center is 30, 40 years old because we didn't take the time to make sure that we counted in our community. They took care of their business. They made sure they counted. So we're not going to blame them for handling their business. We got to blame ourselves. So at the end of the day, one of the things that we talk about is, what do you have to lose? Or what did we lose? What did we miss out on? And if we talk about it, you know what? Because we didn't do this the way we should have done it, we lost out on $1 million for our community. $1 million go a long way. That's a new community center. That's a new library. There's other resources right here in our community that we could have had that somebody else has.
Right. I want to add this. It's a little bit off the what do we get from a monetary standpoint. But a couple of years ago, I started doing my some genealogy, DNA research, finding out who my family is and everything. Through that process, I got real familiar with censuses, 1900 census and everything. And one thing that we have lost as a people is who we are, who our family is. Well, once the Emancipation Proclamation dropped and we kind of dispersed, where we went. We can generally only trace back to the mid 1850s, right around the time that enslaved people were released. What this census can do for us as a people, you go back and look at 1900, 1910, 1920, and I found all of my people, up until the Emancipation Proclamation. So
Census
I know,
record.
the census tract. I know who my people are. For the most, those who didn't refuse. So when we're talking about trying to get back connected with who we are after we were dispersed and went to Louisiana and California and Phoenix and Chicago and around, this is a major. When we look 100 years from now, when your great grandchildren are they heard about great granddad Casey, but they don't know anything about it. This census is going to line it all up: who his mama was, who his daddy, his children, great granduncle, everything. So what we've lost as a people, we can kind of start recouping for the next generations if we participate in this census.
Excellent point. That's an excellent point.
So, Councilman, we're at our ending point. So, what we want to know from you is what are our marching orders? What are our marching orders? What are you telling us to do to help you make sure that this census is successful, at least in the Dallas area?
Real simple. Real simple. Every time I get up and speech, I tell people you are now deputized. You now have the responsibility to make sure that everybody tell everybody they know, to tell everybody they know about why the census is important. And so identifying what we do is we've done this in the city of Dallas under the leadership of Ed Turner, who's he hasn't been Omega, but he's our census coordinator. Ed has put together a strategic plan where they've identified in the city of Dallas we have what they call 200 hard-to-count census tracts, which means 10 years ago, those census tracts either had a low number or were missed. And so what we've done is we've collected this information. We have 14 council districts. We know where every hard-to-count census tract is in all 14 council districts. And so the charge is, come, let's go to work. We'll arm you with what you need. We just need you to have a willingness to go to work. We'll let you know exactly, hey, this particular census tract in the city of Dallas, in this council district, was an undercount. We'll give you a map. We'll give you material. Go forth and be counted.
Okay. Sounds good to me.
Awesome.
So
we got our marching orders. We got work to do.
We have our marching orders, and we need to make sure that everybody's counted, but most of all, the neighborhoods that were undercounted,
Absolutely.
The neighborhoods that are undervalued, neighborhoods that are underfunded. We need to make sure that we're all counted and we get back on the right track. All right, so we appreciate you joining us this evening. We hope that you enjoyed Councilman Thomas and the information that he gave us. We hope that you will take his marching orders and go forth and count because we need to be counted. So on behalf of Brother Nabu Carey and Councilman Casey Thomas, this has been the first installment of Alpha Talk. So we hope that y'all join us the next time and the time after that and the time after that, because we're going to be bringing you some good information, some good voter education information, voter registration information, so that we can change the landscape out there. So we'll see y'all next time.